you know what? I'm going to have pizza on a Tuesday because that pizza doesn't have different caloric value on a Tuesday versus a Sunday or a Friday. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Truth Talks, the podcast that brings you real strategies for sustainable fitness transformation. Now, Paris, when I hear this concept of like sustainable, it makes me think about like, it has to be kind of all week long, every day, onwards and onwards type of deal. It's not something we can just do Monday to Friday and then kind of let it go for the weekend, right? Like, in my mind, anything that has a sustainability element to it is repeatable over time or has this like longevity. It's not dependent on the day of the week.
100%. And I think it's like, if we really want to think about it, like weekends are such a big part of the week. And therefore, if we want this journey to be something that we continue doing, then we need to know how to handle our weekends.
Yeah. And I think it's relatable, though, that, you know, this podcast comes out on Mondays, right? And if you're listening to it on Monday or another day of the week, doesn't matter. You can probably relate to that feeling of like, oh, I'm coming off the weekend and this has to be a fresh week, or I need to restart, Monday restart, that kind of thing. Like, we've all been there. We've all had that feeling. And we've also all had that feeling of like waiting for the weekend in a lot of ways too, right? So we're going to talk about how those two mindsets connect into your actions and behaviors over the course of the weekend. But ultimately today, what we want to address is the question, are weekends holding you back? Because weekends are great. I'm not going to knock weekends, except for maybe a little bit in this episode. I love my weekends, but sometimes the way that we choose to approach weekends can actually hinder progress on our fitness journeys.
Yeah, for sure.
But it doesn't have to.
It's an important discussion, though, because a lot of people are cyclically making progress and undoing progress. Like during the week, great. And then even Friday, let's tag that onto the weekend, 3 days, 3 out of 7. Let's say, okay, Saturday, Sunday is 28.5% of your week. All right. So almost 30%. But if you throw in Friday in there, that's like 3 out of 7 days. I don't know the math on that, but that's a considerable portion of your week. We'll do some quick maths on that.
43%.
43%. So if you say, "Hey, Paris, or Courtney, I'm doing so well. I don't know why I'm not seeing results." But then but you're like, "Oh, but I don't do these actions on the weekends." It's like, hold on a second. If you got, let's say 57% on your test at school, would you be happy? And if the answer is no, then how are we treating our fitness journey with the same mindset? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's so true. And even just like, if you think about law of averages, what you do 43% of the time, or even 29% of the time if we're excluding Fridays, still carries weight.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, it's still a significant chunk of time. Definitely. And so the reason that we're here to talk about weekends is just because of that fact. It is because weekends represent a significant portion of your week, even though sometimes they feel like they go faster. Let's not deny it, right? They feel like they go faster and we feel like the weekdays drag. Yes. But in actuality, the amount of time that passes is still significant.
Yeah. And one more comparison that I'll give is like, imagine if you only did, let's say 70% of your work during the week that you were supposed to do at your job or whatever. Your boss would be like, you didn't finish 30% of your presentation. Like, what are you doing? Or you didn't make 30% of the calls you were supposed to make, or you didn't do 30% of this review of these forms that I told you, right? So it's like, whatever standard we have for other things is like, we need to apply that same standard to our fitness journey. But anyways.
And I will say, like, you and I often talk about the definition of consistency, and it doesn't mean we have to be 100% all the time, right? No. There's a reason why, like, getting an A in class is like, I think this is going way back now. It was like 85 or above or something like that, right?
Yeah, even 80 or above. I think 80 is like A minus. Yeah.
Sure. So we can do great high quality work that deserves an A mark and a great evaluation without it having to be 100%.
Yes.
And that's what we're hoping to kind of like represent in this episode when we talk about weekends. Like, your weekends can give you that 5, 10, 15% buffer when they're approached effectively without you feeling like you have to then all of a sudden just use the same things you do Monday to Friday on the weekends, because that's no fun.
Yeah. Or the opposite mindset of like 100% during the weekend, 0 on the weekends, right?
Right. Yes. So, because as we just talked about, that doesn't average out so pleasantly. No. And that doesn't give you an A grade.
No, it doesn't. So anyways, no, I like this. This is important to chat about. Let's do it.
Cool. Okay. So let's talk about why we're actually here to talk about weekends, other than the fact that of like the share of the week that they represent. And I think it's because like weekends are, for most people, like I'm going to acknowledge out there that everybody's weekend sometimes is different. Like some people's work weeks aren't Monday to Friday. Some people work shift work, whatever it is. So for the purpose of this conversation, we're going to go with the kind of more standard definition of weekends being Friday to Sunday. But a lot of these factors and patterns we're going to talk about also apply to, like, let's say days off work, or
Yeah.
more social days, or less structured days. I'm using air quotes if anybody's listening. So however you personally define your weekend, you'll find the themes still apply.
100%. Let's do this.
So the thing that really differentiates those days, though, these weekends, is the fact that we have a different schedule and we fill that time with different activities.
Yes.
And so when it comes to our fitness goals and fitness journey, that provides us with unique challenges, or not even just challenges, but like unique needs. We need to have distinctive strategies. We need to have distinctive approaches, and we can't expect the same things to be true on weekends as on weekdays, because that's just not how we live our lives.
Yeah. I think during the week we can capitalize on the fact that there's already some sort of skeleton in terms of the routine already outlined for us. Like, for example, if you do have a 9 to 5, like, you kind of know when your breaks are, you know where your meetings are, you know when you have to be there and when you leave. So the framework and the skeleton for you to build on top of is already there. But when it comes to the weekend, it's an open slate. So you have to do a little bit of extra thinking in terms of building that structure, and then balancing that with whatever other social events you have, or family considerations, or other life responsibilities, or recreation. So it's now,
let's not forget recreation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if I had to say a theme of weekends, it's that balance between responsibilities and recreation.
Yeah, absolutely.
To our words for today.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like knowing that there's some contrast between how you need to operate during your weekdays and how you need to operate on your weekends, and kind of knowing what that contrast is, and then coming up with systems for both.
Yeah, exactly. And so that contrast is actually at the heart of this discussion today. And when we talk about our question, which is, are weekends holding you back? We're going to first address the ways in which that distinctive construct of weekends can provide challenges. So we're going to focus on those challenges, but not in a negative way, just to bring to light, like, the fact that this is a reality and this can be a factor you need to consider. And it's ultimately leading us to recognition of the strategies we need to build to have success on weekends.
Yes.
But then we're also, in the end, going to take that kind of distinctive construct of the weekends and also acknowledge how it can be an opportunity. So make sure you stay tuned for that, because that's really where there's an actionable, empowering section of this too, right? Is like, it can be an opportunity, but let's address the challenges first. Do we want to start with, like, why that distinctive structure of weekends can become challenging?
Yeah, and I think this is going to be important for listeners who find themselves having a tough time staying on track on the weekend. Like, this is more for those people. If you're like, weekends, I've mastered that, doesn't throw me off. Okay, then maybe, you might get some value from this podcast, but this is for the people that might have a little bit more of a challenging time with managing weekends, and that's what we're here to help with.
Yes, exactly.
So let's start.
Okay. So there's 3, we're going to kind of go through 3 of the unique, we're calling them considerations, but they are kind of challenges inherently. There's 3 sections. The first is nutrition challenges. The second is lifestyle challenges, because, like we said, your life looks different on the weekends. And then the third is mindset challenges, because we do mentally approach weekends differently, not just act differently, we mentally approach them differently.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 kind of key buckets of challenges we're going to talk through today. Let's just dive right in and start off with nutrition challenges. What do you think is the first challenge when it comes to nutrition and weekends?
I think it's just that kind of outlined routine that we have during a workday, for example, is not given to us. So the structure of, like, meal timing and, like, what meals are we eating when, all of a sudden that's kind of removed. So now we're like, I'm just going to go on the fly.
Wing it.
Yeah, I'm just going to wing it, and I'm just going to go on the fly, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know about, like, anyone else listening, but sometimes on weekends, like, I sleep in, which I'm sure many of us do. And we'll talk about sleep in a second, spoiler alert. But when I sleep in, like, I've now pushed back, like, the start of my day, which then pushes back when I eat breakfast, which then there's a domino effect, right?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, the structure of my timing and schedule of the day that is different on weekends starts to impact how I structure my food for the day. So that's a really important one.
Absolutely.
And I think part of that too is, like, you have the schedule, but then also you said it's just like what you eat. It's what, when, and how, right? I think those are the 3 things with nutrition. You just address the when. The timing of your meals changes. The what changes too, because on weekends we tend to, like, gravitate towards, air quotes, fun foods. right? So on a Friday night, we might do like pizza night, and that's great. But we need to have strategies, because otherwise, if we don't have strategies, then it can start to interfere. Like, we inherently make different food choices on weekends. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I'm just saying, like, that is one of the ways in which weekends can become more of a challenge when it comes to food choices. So we've talked about when, we've talked about what, and then the how, I think, is also really important. We often go out to eat. So how we're eating is more in social settings. It's more at restaurant scenes. It's takeout, right?
Yes. Yes.
So ultimately, like, those three things working together, what, when, and how, completely changes what your priorities need to be when it comes to devising nutrition strategies, structures, systems, routines, thought processes, skills. Like, I can go on and on. It changes a lot.
It does. And these are skills that you're going to have to develop over a course of time in your fitness journey, in your fitness career, we'll call it. It's not going to be like when you first start taking your goal seriously, your first weekend's not going to be perfect. And you're also going to have other weekends where you're going to mess up. Even like myself, even in recent times, there's weekends where I'm like, I could have maybe done X, Y, Z better. But like, that's part of the process. But most of the time, I'm pretty damn good at managing my weekends, I will say. Why? Because I practice it and I do some self-assessment in different situations. And I think one of the main reasons why people do struggle with weekends, and you talked about how a lot of times we're eating out or eating at somebody's house, is their social environment changes. And we tend to maybe sometimes just want to do what everybody else is doing in some aspects. Or we almost feel obligated to just eat the way everybody else does.
Right. Because we're eating with them. Right.
Yes.
And it's not just like eating at home with your family dinner, right? You're eating with other people. So that
Yes.
social pressure, I'm going to call it. And it's not like peer pressure like high school, like, hey, bud, do this. It's a different kind of social pressure. It's that willingness to be a part of something and a willingness to fit in, which is a little bit more subtle, but it's definitely still there.
But there are some blame situations where people will just choose what everybody else is doing so they don't get judgment out of fear of judgment.
Right. Yeah.
And we've had that a lot of times with clients where, I don't want to use the term like outgrowing your friend group, but sometimes you do. If you're going on a major self-development journey, sometimes it's not that you guys are both bad people for maybe having distance. It's just you're going to find that some people just won't support you. And that's a tough thing to say, but if you're going for dinner, your friends are like, Mr. Healthy, or like, oh, how come you don't just have those 7 beers with us like you used to? Or like, oh, why are you eating so healthy? Like, just get a burger like everybody else and be normal, right? So like those kind of things, kind of red flag on the front group. But anyways, I want to bring that up because some people do deal with that.
Yeah, and it tends to be more prominent on weekends. And it affects, first and foremost, nutrition choices on weekends, right?
Yes, exactly.
You also threw something in there. You said, like, oh, how come you won't have 7 beers anymore, right? Like, alcohol. And I'm bucketing this under nutrition. But alcohol, like, everybody has a different relationship with it. Some people drink during the week. Some people drink exclusively on weekends. But whatever it is, I would say more commonly, we tend to see it become part of those weekend social events, whether they're like just getting together with friends or whether they are more formal weekend events. Like, I don't know, you go to a concert or a wedding or whatever it is.
Yes.
But now when we introduce alcohol, I'm not going to talk about people's relationship with alcohol, but from a nutrition perspective, it does have an impact on your total daily intake, especially with calorie content.
Yes.
And then also it changes the food choices you make after you've consumed the alcohol, right? We need to be very mindful or just aware of the fact that one of the things that can hold you back on weekends when it comes to nutrition is also alcohol.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to kind of like quickly summarize what we've talked about in this nutrition challenge bucket. When we think about the challenges of weekends with nutrition, we said when your schedule changes, right? What you choose typically different foods on the weekends. Even me, sometimes I don't want protein oats for breakfast on a Sunday. So I make protein pancakes or eggs and omelets and turkey bacon, whatever it is, right? Yeah. So the food change. How you eat changes, social settings, dining out, etc. And then we've introduced alcohol a little bit too. It doesn't mean that these things have to hold you back, though. These 4 things just are things you need to be aware of. Aware of and strategize around. How I like to think of it, and this applies across everything we're going to talk about in this episode, is our goal today is to bring awareness of the things that can hold you back when it comes to pursuing your fitness goals over the weekend. The next step then is to build the strategies around them. And then by building the strategies, and as you said, Paris, like practicing those strategies, then you start to build the skills. Today, because we only have half an hour and there's a lot of things we want to cover off, we're not going to talk too much about like the strategy side of things.
Can do
But
that in another episode.
we can do that in another episode. Yeah, like specific strategies for dining out and things like that. We will definitely cover those off in the future. But today we want to lay just a foundation of like helping you become aware of why weekends might feel like they're veering you off track with your fitness goals. So is there anything else you want to talk about on the nutrition side of things before we move into lifestyle considerations?
I think that's pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully that helped. And hopefully you can, not hopefully, because we don't hope you're having challenges, but if you are feeling challenged by weekends, we hope that brought some clarity to understanding potentially why food decisions on the weekends feel so tough. Yeah. Okay. So lifestyle considerations. Like we said, your schedule on the weekend looks different. We're talking different responsibilities, and we're talking different recreational habits and events, right? What else is happening from a lifestyle perspective that has an interference effect when it comes to fitness goals?
I think one of the main things is like your sleep schedule can definitely get interrupted. And so like maybe during the week, I don't know, you go to bed at 10:30 or something like that. But now on the weekends, maybe with certain social events or things like that, now your bedtime is like 12:30 or 1 a.m. But you're still waking up maybe the same time as you did during the week, or maybe you're sleeping in later, but now your sleep patterns are disrupted. Our body loves regularity with its sleep patterns. That's when it does it best. So if you're used to going to bed earlier, then now we're staying up way later, and maybe on the weekends now we're only sleeping 4 to 5 hours. Now we're underslept. And that also, of course, has an effect on everything.
Yeah. And even if you're not undersleeping, let's say you're still like, oh, I'm still getting 8 hours because I go to bed at 1 a.m., but I sleep until 9 instead of getting up at 6 or 6:30. But what you've now done, let's say it's Sunday, you wake up at 9. Now you can't fall asleep that night because you slept in or whatever it is. And now Monday morning you're tired or whatever, right? There is a downstream effect. At the end of the day, there's a shift in your patterns that breaks that consistency, I guess.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. When you're not slept, everything feels more challenging.
100%.
And I will say, like, when your sleep is disrupted as well, and we're talking about fitness, it definitely impacts like your energy for your workouts and your willingness to work out. I definitely think that is one of the considerations coming out of sleep and recovery from workouts, of course.
Yeah. Recovery, appetite management, energy, psychological drive, like the full works. And also if you combine that with alcohol, right? Like people when they drink, they tend to stay up later, go out, have a good time. And now we're going to bed at 3 a.m. We're getting a little bit of sleep, which is not great. And we're also, sleep quality is down because of the booze. And then also
I just want to jump on that for a second, because I think there's going to be somebody out there listening going like, oh no, I fall asleep so fast when I've had a few drinks. That can be true. However, factually, scientifically, your deep sleep is disrupted. Even if you feel like you fell asleep faster, you are not getting the same sleep quality when you have alcohol in your system.
Yes. Sleep latency, which means time to sleep, is decreased. So you fall asleep faster, but it's more of a sedation effect almost. And as you said, the REM sleep, which is like where the money is for good quality sleep, is decreased. And people will say, oh, well, I don't drink, I just smoke weed. Marijuana has the same effect. You might think, oh, wow, I slept so great. But again, scientifically, it does actually reduce REM sleep. It's more of a sedation rather than like a deep quality sleep. So it's important to know that when people say, oh, I only smoke for sleep. It's, well, yeah, you fall asleep and maybe stay asleep, but like the quality is not the greatest. So it's kind of cycling back to the party kind of situation. We're going out late, we're having drinks, so we're getting less sleep and worse quality sleep. And also, as you said before, Court, we tend to make poor decisions when we are staying up later because now we're hungry and the alcohol reduces our inhibitions. So we maybe went for the post bar poutine or whatever. So now we're also having a higher amount of calories from that food and the alcohol, and then a poor night's sleep and not enough sleep. My goodness, that's a recipe for disaster.
Oh my God. Yeah. So when we talk about lifestyle considerations, sleep is really at the core of it. And it's the decisions that we make on the weekends, whether they're, let's say, on the more extreme side of like staying up extra late and partying and drinking or smoking or whatever it is. That's one version of sleep disruption. But there also, let's not forget, we started with that simpler version of like, it can actually just be a shift in your sleep schedule that makes you feel like you're less stable is the word that comes to mind, but it's not really
less sharp.
Less sharp, right? I think that is a factor worth considering. There is another lifestyle consideration outside of sleep that I want to talk about, which is like something that I personally experience. And it's related to the workout side of things. When it comes to training on the weekends, a lot of the times I'll be like, okay, you know what? My Sunday's pretty open. I'll hit my last session of the week will be on Sunday because I have more time. I won't have to rush. But what ends up happening is that my Sunday starts, and because I don't have like as fixed of a schedule, theoretically, I can be more fluid with when I choose to work out. But then it makes it easier to kind of like push it off. Like, and sometimes I'll find myself, it's like 6 p.m. on a Saturday. I'm like, oh man, I've pushed this off all day. Now I got to go before dinner
Yeah.
or something, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes the lifestyle considerations of like an open schedule, and I know not everybody's weekends are always open. Sometimes they're jam packed with other things. But in the cases where your schedule is more open, sometimes it can actually feel harder to get things done.
Yes. Yeah.
At least that's how I feel.
No, it's true. And like, we've worked with quite a few teachers, and I feel like or even like shift workers, they might have like 5 on or like 5 off or something, or teachers have like summer off. So in those cases, a lot of times they find it tougher because, as I said, you don't have that skeleton and framework of the work day to then build your
Right.
nutrition training steps on top of. Especially like, again, if you're doing shift work, you do 5 long shifts, you're like, okay, I'm on point, so routine, and then you have 5 days off. You have to take the proactiveness to then build out that skeleton
Your
for
own
yourself,
schedule.
which can
Yeah.
it takes more intention.
It does. It does. And not to say it's not possible. It's very possible. But again, we're here to acknowledge like the challenges worth being aware of. And one of the challenges is kind of that, it's not a free for all, but that like less structured environment or
Yeah.
less structured
Yeah.
environment on the weekends. Speaking of less structure, the third lifestyle consideration I definitely want to talk about is actually just like that desire to relax. Like if we see weekends as relaxing, we can actually kind of easily be caught up in like not moving as much. I'm not going to talk about this so much from the workout perspective unless you want to, but like I think even just with steps, right? And like
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we've covered off in previous podcasts about like the role of steps and how important it is just to have daily movement. But when we are like, oh, you know what? I'm going to have a slow morning, myself included. One of my favorite things to do on the weekends is get up and sit on the couch and read a book because I don't do
Yeah.
that on the weekdays.
It's special. Yeah.
It's special, right? But let's say Justin, my partner, takes the dog for the walk in the morning, which I usually do on weekdays. Now I'm not getting in those like couple thousand steps that I usually
Yes.
get to start my day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Luckily, over time, because I've gone through that cycle so much in my life, weekend after weekend, I now know, okay, if I don't do that morning walk on the weekend that I usually do because I'm reading instead, I have to make up those steps somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Yeah.
But it does change, like, okay, we can fall into this trap of like, oh my God, I got 2,000 steps all day today because I was like lounging.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just again, intention and being proactive with your thinking.
Exactly. Okay. We've covered nutrition considerations that can be challenges. We've covered lifestyle considerations that can be challenges. The next one I want to talk about is the mindset challenges that we experience when it comes to weekends, because it's not necessarily just our actions. And yes, there's a distinctive schedule and things like that, and we make different choices. But ultimately, you and I go back to this time and time again, is like our mindset really shapes and drives those choices.
Yeah. And it's like the week is just an arbitrary structure that we've created, right? Like Monday to Sunday, like Saturday and Sunday technically are the exact same as the other days. We just perceive them differently because of, our calendar.
Or even like you said, some people who work shift work, like their Tuesday could look like my Sunday. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Which is a lot of times the case. So it's just to remind ourselves of that, and then just trying not to over glorify the weekend, I think, is a big thing. And here's something that I might have said in a way back in another discussion at some point, but it's if you are completely glorifying the weekends and you need the weekend to just completely like escape, we'll say, quote unquote, then maybe you need to evaluate like how you can make your weekdays more enjoyable, and so that it's not like we hate Monday to Friday and then weekend is our chance. We have to fit in as much indulgences and as much fun as possible, and we just completely glorify those 2 days. But then when Monday comes around, it's like, oh, Mondays. It's like, how can we make our week more just baseline great, so that the weekend doesn't seem like we need to glorify it?
It's also a lot of pressure to put on those 2 days to think that it has to make up for the other 5. It's a lot of pressure. And like, I don't know, I think it would be easy to be disappointed and be like, oh, I didn't do enough, or I didn't indulge enough, or it didn't completely make up for those 5 days I spent kind of unhappy, right? And I know it's different because everybody's weekdays have different responsibilities, but generally speaking, I love that you brought that up. Like, we don't need to glorify the weekend if we can find some simple joys even in the weekdays too.
100%. And sometimes just being more present and grateful. Gratitude, as I've told you before, something I've been thinking about a lot in the past few months. I think just stopping your week and being like, hey, I'm grateful for this. I don't know. You
Yeah.
come back to your place, you're like, I have a comfy couch, or like this blanket is warm,
Mm-hmm.
or you know what, my coffee was great this morning, or oh, I have my favorite meal. Like learning to find joy in those moments
Mm-hmm.
is a skill, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important.
Yep. I like that. That weekend reward mentality, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
giving yourself rewards throughout the week as well and not saving them all for the weekend. I'm going to choose like a overly simplistic example, but like when it comes to food, we tend to say like, "Oh no, these are the weekend foods only. Like I can only eat pizza on the weekend." Well, what if like let's say you had okay, this is going to might come out the wrong way, but give me a sec to explain it. Let's say you actually had a really rough work day and you're exhausted. Maybe giving yourself like hey, you know what? I'm going to have pizza on a Tuesday because that pizza doesn't have different caloric value on a Tuesday versus a Sunday or a Friday. But if you have the strategies to know how to include it, then you don't have to now cram all of that into the weekend. If you know,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you know what? I know how to strategically include these foods. So it doesn't
Yes.
have to be a weekend reward. I don't have to glorify it as a weekend choice. And I can intentionally find joy even if that is like doesn't have to be food related joy, nor should it be food related joy
Mm-hmm.
all the time. But if that is one of the ways that you do give yourself some comfort during the week, don't save it for the weekend. Don't glorify it by putting it on a weekend pedestal.
And yeah, and learning the strategies to incorporate it so you're
Right.
not sacrificing progress either.
Yes, exactly. And that is the key thing. That's why I said this might come out wrong because I was like, I'm not saying just go for it. I'm saying build the strategies so you know how to do it because that's the distinction there.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
like it.
The second mindset one I do want to acknowledge before we start wrapping up is just like that idea of like, oh, I'll restart on Monday. Mondays are I was going to say Mondays are great. I don't know how many people would actually agree with me with that. The fresh start effect that we experience on Mondays can be really productive. But when that fresh start effect comes at the expense of the weekend, of
Mm-hmm.
that 29 to 43% of the week, it's not always worth it.
Just as we don't have to earn our weekends, doesn't mean that we have to constantly be restarting every Monday as well. And I think a lot of times we just feel like we need to do certain things on the weekends, and then we feel like, oh, Monday's coming, so it's okay. I'm gonna get back on track. We like justify things on the weekends a little bit more because it's like it's okay, I can do this because tomorrow's Monday. I'm going to be right back on it. And to an extent, I love the mindset of just hopping back on the bandwagon.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're
Yeah.
finding yourself in this pattern of like glorifying weekends, going a little bit overboard, and then overly restricting during the week, I think that's when you get into a little bit of trouble, and you can eventually be spinning your wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of weekends, sometimes people just have these baseline habits that they feel like they like have to do. Friday night, I don't know. It's like you always go to the bar and then for wings. It's like, well, even though it's fine, like, is there something else that you could do?
Mm-hmm.
But you just feel like, oh, but this is just what I do. It's like, well, can we challenge that belief system? Is there something else you could do that is just as fun, maybe even more fun, that is not like your typical? It's
So
like challenging the
challenging.
belief systems.
Yeah, and if you challenge like your belief system around your weekend, you might not need that mindset of all restart Monday. And I would challenge you, speaking of challenges, to actually like think about what would a Monday morning look like when you don't have the pressure of feeling like you have to restart.
Yes.
How much easier could your Monday actually be if you're like, I'm continuing my momentum. I'm not trying to rebuild it. That
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of the Sunday scaries away too.
Yes, yes. The Sunday scaries are a big one. I still get a lot of Sunday scaries, but let me tell you, Sundays are a lot less scary when you took your weekend to like relax, enjoy time with loved ones, and like plan out your week. Then Monday you're starting already kicking butt
Mm-hmm.
versus playing catch up versus if you were underslept, hungover, don't have your groceries, I still have to do laundry, not planned out for your work week. It's like there's a big difference. So it's like set yourself up for success so that you're feeling like Monday is already in momentum
Yeah.
versus Monday is building momentum.
Yes. Love that. Momentum Mondays.
Momentum Mondays.
Momentum Mondays. Let's start wrapping things up by
Mm-hmm.
just, we said what we were going to do was also outline the opportunity. The main goal in this episode, as we said up front, is to help you become more aware of the challenges that weekends can pose. But we want to leave you with some positive takeaways to help you start building the strategies, which is the next step, right? So when it comes to ensuring your weekends don't hinder your progress, it really just starts with like planning for them. When you have the awareness in mind of like, here's the things I typically encounter on weekends, here's what my time usually looks like, or what my priorities are on weekends, then you can plan. Again, that's why we wanted to focus on bringing awareness to the real challenges, because when you know them, you can plan around them.
Yes, yes, that's the main thing. It's just that little bit of looking ahead and saying what's going on and how do I thrive during the weekend is it can go such a long way. Like for example, this weekend I'm going to Montreal. I packed 9 meals. I packed 9 meals
Oh my God.
in my bag. Why? Did I have to? Probably not. Am I maybe going to fill in the gaps with a couple meals out here and there when I'm there? Yes. But I looked ahead and I said, what is going to reduce the amount of stress so that I can be more present in the moment and enjoy it? It's going to be making sure I feel like I'm on top of my game with that. And like knowing, okay, I have one more session. Okay, we're going to hit the session on Saturday. Like it's getting
But you're
done.
going to hit it with the boys. So it's going to be, it's not
Exactly.
like, this is not coming. I just want to
It's
highlight
not
for anyone who's
punishment. Yeah.
listening. Yeah, this is not you being like, I have to compromise on this weekend. And like, this is also not an average weekend, right?
No.
So what
Yeah.
you're saying is like, you're providing examples of how you're planning ahead for not even an average weekend. Imagine an average weekend where you know for a fact what that looks like because you just lived it the last, however many weekends.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just like,
No, yeah.
just pointing out that, you might be a more extreme example than some people when it comes to planning these like special weekends. But at the end of the day, you're planning what you need based on your goals, right?
Yeah.
And that's
for
the
me,
key.
Exactly. It's going to look different for everybody. The last time I was in Montreal, I was in competition prep, and I actually didn't bring a bunch of meals prep.
Interesting.
Crazy, right? I still made it happen, but what I learned from that was it was more actually stressful for me and detracted from the moment when I was trying to math my way through the day. Now my calorie budget is way higher, so you would think I should do the opposite that I've been doing. Like in this phase, I should be more flexible and vice versa. But what I learned from that previous trip was like, okay, I'm actually going to be able to have more fun and focus more on enjoying the moment if I am more set up for success. And that's a personality trait I just learned about myself through experience. Some other people, it might be different, but that's fine. This is what's going to work for me. And how can I maximize the enjoyment out of the weekend?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think if you're somebody who's listening to this, be like, okay, how do I apply that to me? Well, think about your last 4 weekends. What did they look like? The same way Parrish just looked at the last time he was on his trip to Montreal, a special weekend. He looked at that to help guide his current decisions. Chances are, regardless of what they looked like, you have lived through the last few weekends, right? And so just do a little bit of an audit. Understand, like, okay, which of the challenges that we've talked about today have you personally experienced? Are there any other responsibilities or recreational activities that are important to you on the weekends? How do you want to feel on Sunday nights versus how have you typically felt on Sunday nights? What have your Mondays looked like coming out of those weekends? If you can ask yourself those questions and use your own lived experience to identify these challenges, become aware of how you have felt versus want to feel, or have behaved versus you want to behave, that's the key. That's, I think, Paris, what your example is telling us. You can plan when you know what your past has looked like.
Exactly. Yeah. And hence the name Truth Body Systems. We're always going to advocate for creating systems for different contexts.
Exactly. So systems for weekends are just as important. We are not going to sit here and say, just make your weekends look like your weekdays. Honestly, that would be boring, unrealistic, and probably not that productive.
You can use themes or principles.
You can use themes, yeah, but I'm not saying like, okay, personal experience. I'm not going to wake up on a Saturday and be like, all right, I'm going to sit down and do some client check-ins the same way that I do on my Monday mornings. That's, I'm going to take that time to read or whatever. But I think it's just making sure that you understand like what systems you need to build to be successful. And those systems start with identifying the challenges like we spoke about today.
Yes. Cool.
Okay. So that's it, I think. Anything else you want to cover off?
I think that's great. We're going to do another episode on like exact strategies now, but this is really important to kind of just paint a picture of what are some things you need to be aware of, as you've been saying.
Yeah. And I think the weekend strategies, they will be different for some of these different challenges. So if you're tuning in, please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss those future episodes if you haven't already. We might do an episode specifically on like navigating alcohol. We might do an episode, we will, because we're committing to it.
Yeah.
An episode on like social events, an episode on weekend schedule management or meal timing or things like that. We can tackle all those, and we will. If there is one of these challenges that we spoke about today that you are most keen to hear a strategy for, please let us know in the comments below or reach out to one of us directly, and we will make sure that we add that to the top of the list. In the meantime, we hope that you found this conversation enlightening in terms of allowing you to recognize some of the challenges around weekends and why weekends could be holding you back from achieving your fitness goals in full. Let's not forget, depending on whether or not you count Friday, they are 29 to 43% of your week.
Yeah.
If anybody remembers anything from this episode, that stat I kind of think is powerful because I'm a numbers person, but
it
yeah.
is. Cool. Great.
All right, everybody. Please don't forget, like, subscribe, comment below your own personal weekend challenges or what strategies you want to hear for weekends in future episodes. Without further ado, we'll leave you for this week and we'll be back in your feeds with another episode of Truth Talks next Monday. Bye for now.
Great day.